Look at this gorgeous cake. This absolutely delicious looking cake. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is a blackberry wine cake. This is my recipe. I've just finished developing it, and I've got something fun to show you how to make. Today I've been enjoying my coffee this morning. I've been working on a recipe for a couple of weeks. Okay, I think my fourth attempt was the one that got me where I wanted to be on this recipe and got me the texture and the effect that I'm wanting for you to have in this cake. I'm going to make one more change to it today, and that's just through the addition of a few extra blackberries. We're going to give some more ingredients to the inside of the cake for a more speckled appearance, basically. This is blackberry wine cake, and normally it uses blackberry wine. I wasn't able to locate any blackberry wine, and I wanted to make sure that I used something as a substitute that would work for you. So this will work with either of these wines, and I've made this cake both ways. This blackberry wine, you can use it or you can use Concord grape wine. Both are very, very sweet. They have a lot of sugar in them, and that's part of what we're doing here. So I backed off the sugar in this recipe and replacing it with that wine. And the wine also has another characteristic that I had to overcome. Wine has a lot of water in it, okay? And only so much of it is the grape juice and the alcohol. And what's there will activate gluten. Milk doesn't have as much water that activates gluten. So what happened when I switched from using milk to using wine, I was activating more of the gluten in my all-purpose flour, and I was not getting the texture I wanted. It was coming out heavy. So after a few tweaks and adjustments and changing my flour to a cake flour, which is a low gluten flour, I was able to get the exact texture that I want for you to have in your cake. So what we're going to do is we're going to get busy in just a moment right over here measuring out these ingredients, and going to get busy making this cake. And I want to show you a different way of measuring your ingredients, something that maybe you're not accustomed to or used to, and it's something that you're going to start seeing in the years to come more and more. This is a method that's used throughout the world with the exception of the United States. Here it's not used as much. And that is the method of measuring your ingredients by weight. So we're going to be using a scale, and I'll be measuring everything in grams. Okay, just that simple. A lot of recipes, if you get a recipe that's from Europe, that's a cake recipe or something like that, it's going to have measurements in grams. And so you're going to have to learn how to work with that anyway. Having a scale, which is only $20, is a smart thing in the kitchen, and it makes your life infinitely easier. And when you see how I measure out these ingredients, how fast it happens with a scale versus using a measuring cup, I can measure my ingredients in half the time as to measuring them out with measuring cups. It's also much more accurate. Sometimes 2 cups of flour can be different in its weight, dramatically different. And it can make a recipe go from being very stiff to being very watery. So you want, if you start using this weight measurement, you get past all of that. It helps to stabilize a lot of recipes. So let me show you how I do that. Let's turn the camera over here. We're going to take a look at the ingredients. We're going to get started with this cake. And this is a blackberry wine cake. It's going to be delicious, I promise you. Come on. I've got my items here ready to do this cake. First of all, you're going to need a bundt pan. Does not have to be shaped like this one. I just chose this because I like the look of it. It was cool. So that's going to be the shape of our cake. Now, I also have a sifter here. Very important. You do want to sift your flour on this. And I have down here my handy dandy little scale. We'll turn this on. Now, it shows 0 grams, but the minute I put my bowl on there to weigh out whatever I'm weighing, it's going to show the weight of the bowl. So I have 81 gram bowl there. So what I need to do is hit tar, and that will zero it out, is what that's going to do. After we get a nice zero going on here, it's time to weigh out ingredients. And in this case, I'm going to be using 300 grams of sugar. And I wanted to show you how nice this was to do this way. Okay, sugar, 300 grams. 279. Bingo. 305. That 5 grams isn't going to make any difference, okay? Boom, we've measured out our sugar. See how much easier that is? Folks, please do yourself a favor and just weigh stuff out this way, and it's going to be so much easier for you to do your recipes. Now, in the cake, when we're working a cake, sometimes we like to put dry ingredients in a sifter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set things up so I can do exactly that. I can measure into the sifter with the sifter on here. So here I have a larger bowl to work with. I can take my sifter, I'll pull my knob up as I do this, and drop it in there. That'll just get in the way otherwise. So I need to, again, zero this out. Push the tar, it zeroes that out. The ingredients that we're going to use in this wonderful cake today starts with that flour. We're using some cake flour. Over here, I've got butter right there and some blackberry wine. Now, if you can't find blackberry wine, substitute Concord grape wine. Either way, it needs to be one of those nice sweet wines. Right here, I've got some blackberry jam. We're going to be using that. Don't use jelly, use jam on this one because you want the fruit in it. Here we've got some sugar and salt and baking powder as well as egg whites. And in addition, I'm recommending you use a spray for your bundt pan. One of the sprays that has the flour mixed in with it. This is a commercial type of baker's spray that has flour built into it, and that's what I'll be using on my bundt pan. Even though my bundt pan is non-stick, I still do this to ensure a good release. Folks, it's time to get on with making this cake. Before we do, though, we need to sift together these dry ingredients. I'm going to take my salt and just get it shaken down in there. And also this baking powder, let's get it right on the flour there. And the reason we do that is we want it to be evenly dispersed. And we use the sifter to also make sure there are no lumps or anything like that in the flour or in that baking powder. And folks, sometimes that happens. Sometimes there's lumps in the baking powder. Also, this helps to aerate the flour and further makes the cake a little lighter, a little bit fluffier. Now, our flour, I like to use a little measuring cup to dip flour out with when I'm working it into my mixer. But I don't need that just yet. I don't need that. I don't need this jam or the wine just yet. What I need to work with is the butter. The butter has to be creamed. It has to be made light. And this is one of the ways we get air into a recipe is we cream the butter. Now, creaming the butter, what is that? Basically, that's beating it so that it becomes soft. Now, when we're creaming our butter, I like to use a mixer. Doing this by hand, it'll just kill you, folks. You can do it with a whisk, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. I need to double the volume of the butter. And that doesn't mean adding more butter. That means whipping it until the volume increases. So it looks like there's more there. And what we're doing is we're just whipping air into it. I'm going to use a paddle. That's what this is called. Regular beaters, if you have double beaters on a mixer, that works fine. And the hand mixers will do this recipe perfectly, all right? They're a great use for this. I don't have one. I've got this. Okay, so I use this. Turn this on, and we're going to let it run until that gets nice and smooth and well creamed. We'll just give it a little time. This takes several minutes, so be patient with it and occasionally use a spatula. One of these guys right here, use a spatula to scrape the bowl. Make sure it's not running when you do that, okay? And I hate to make it sound like people are fools. They're not. But there are some folks that have never been around one of these machines and they're trying it for the first time, and I don't want to have them make a mistake. Never reach into one of these. Dangerous as can be, they are known for breaking bones. So keep yourself away from these big ones, okay? Turn it off, then work it. It's been a couple of minutes, about 3, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes. I have not been timing it. What we're looking for here isn't something that you time. It's a certain specific effect, a way of making the butter come out just right. And that's what we're looking for there. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to scrape this bowl down. I use a spatula to do this. We do this a couple of times, and it's very important, okay? Whenever you're using a mixer, and it's any kind of a mixer, any brand of mixer, any type, has a similar problem, and that is with getting the material free from the edges of the bowl. This brand of mixer makes a paddle like this that has a rubber spatula or a silicone spatula on the edge of it that scrapes the bowl, but it only works to a certain point. Once the materials get above the beater itself, you still have to hand scrape it. So get used to doing that. Now I'm going to turn it back on. We're going to cream it some more and fluff it a little more, and then once it has doubled in volume, I'm going to work that sugar in. Turn this off. This has really been getting at it. Let me kind of kick. Oops. There we go. Right switch. Kick that back a little bit so it's out of my way. My butter, if you'll look at that, the color is almost white, as I mentioned it would be, and it looks beautiful. So we've lost that yellowish look, and the reason it looks white is because it has increased in volume, so the yellow doesn't go as far, that yellow food dye, and it being stretched further doesn't do the job as well. So now we're seeing the natural color of the butter, which is white, and we've doubled it in bulk. Okay, so it's like I have twice as much butter down here, and I can take this, and you can see some yellow streaks from what came off of my spatula here, and it contrasts with the butter itself quite clearly. Anyway, we're going to take our butter, which is now very soft, and we're going to start working in that sugar. Look at that. You see those little stiff peaks sticking up off of that butter? And how it's nice sharp peaks here and here? This is what we're looking for. And this is super delicate and soft, folks, and very, very light. If you want whipped butter, this is what you do. Boy, it does taste good, too. So I'm going to take this. We're going to start this machine up. Again, we're going to do it on low speed. I'm going to slowly work in that sugar, and once it's fully worked in, I'll speed it up for just a couple of minutes before then slowing it down, and then we begin our egg mixture. When we start the egg mixture, I'm going to forewarn you, it's going to look funky. It's going to look like they're not going to go together. You're going to possibly think that, but patience with it, and it actually does come together. It'll be cool. You'll see. There we go. This. Low speed. Always low speed when adding ingredients. Add them gently and slowly, and not all at once, or it'll throw it right back out at you. There we go. Back to that low speed. We add in the rest. Not all at once, just gently let it fall in there, slowly as it goes. There we go. So there's no rush on getting that sugar in. Now we're going to cream this again, as I mentioned, for about 3 minutes, and then we start working in our egg. Okay, now let's take a look. We're getting a beautiful, beautiful creamed butter and sugar, all right? And the thing of it is you don't have to cream this to the point that you've dissolved out that sugar. That's not necessary, all right? It's just not. This cake comes out beautifully, but look at how much we have here. You might be wondering, why is it so important to work air into it? Well, the whole idea is to get a cake to rise up and rise up in the oven. And this is a technique that was developed centuries back, actually. And they would beat lots of air into the butter, and that would help, that combined with eggs would help the cake to rise up. And it worked, okay? And then, of course, along comes leavenings that are chemical based, like baking powder, baking soda, and those, which, you know, are sodium bicarbonate, those are what provides the rise these days. But we still use these old methods to increase and help to improve the quality of that rise, and it does work. Cream your butter. This is an old standard method. It works, and it's very important. Now the next thing we do is we're going to work in that egg, and it's going to get kind of sloppy looking at this point. Don't let that deter you. This will come out beautiful. You're gonna love the way it looks. So as you see, it doesn't look like they are wanting to combine. Just kind of a streaked mess. But it will combine. Let me increase it slightly. Increase it to that next speed, but not to a high speed, not just yet. We want those to combine to begin with. And then once they've combined, we'll work it up to a high speed and beat it once again working air into the mixture. Thing about egg whites, they like to hold air. They fluff easily. And so this is the part of the recipe where we get to take advantage of that. All right, and as I mentioned that we were gonna gain volume again, and look what happened. See how that kind of got light and fluffy and almost custard-like. Very, very cool, right? That's what we're looking for right there, guys. So we have worked a lot of air into our cake just through mechanical means. We haven't put any baking soda, baking powder, anything like that in there at this time. Now we're going to, because it's been added to the flour. However, we're gaining volume before we even get to that. All right, so that's our advantage there. And it makes for a better, lighter, fluffier cake and a softer, moister cake. You're gonna like it. Next thing we do, we start working in those other ingredients. And again, it's starting on a slow speed, working stuff in. And I'm gonna start by working in my jam. Something I wanna mention at this time, when it comes to your jam, I mentioned using jam so you can get fresh fruit into this dish. Another way we can do that is simply to take fresh fruit, cut it up, and put it into this dish. And remember, folks, blackberries, they make a mess, all right? They stain things. Be prepared. You're gonna have purple fingers, you're gonna have a purple cutting board, and that's just part of the way it works, okay? Some things in life come with a little bit of trouble, and this is the little bit of trouble that this item comes with, okay? So I'm gonna do a couple more of these, and we're gonna have a little bit of some chopped blackberries in that cake that when they are eaten will just be an extra wonderful experience. When you see yours has a little bit of that in there, you'll like it. You'll want that piece a little more. Okay, looks like a nice amount, about half or about 1/3 of what I have in here. That's about right for me, okay? So we will start by working in our fruit and our jam. Let's place the fruit right here on the edge. Just push it right off in there. Isn't that nice? This is also going to help with some of the color inside of the cake. This, as well as the wine, it all adds to a really pretty color that the cake has. If you'll notice when I'm putting things in this, I use a small amount at a time. A little bit added, a little more added, a little more. This is done on purpose, and that's to help it to mix quicker. It's more evenly mixed faster, okay? Let's start in with a little bit of flour, low speed again. Add in some wine. And this is just a matter of gently working them in. If you notice, I just kind of keep the wine gently flowing as I gently spoon in the flour. And this, by the way, is a really good time to turn on that oven and get it preheating. Sometimes if that beater's in the front, you can bump the motor a little bit, it pushes it back and it makes it a little less troublesome when you open this up. I like to knock a little of that off of that beater just so it doesn't drop down and make a mess on me while I'm trying to do this. All I'm doing is going in there and breaking loose anything that's down low on that bowl. I'm trying not to make too much of a mess in the process. Let's face it, sometimes making a cake means making a little bit of a mess, and it's okay to do that. There we have it. That is a batter that's ready to go down into our pan. Now I've been shaking this spray. There are a lot of different brands of these baker's spray, but you're looking for one that's got the flour mixed in with it. That way it acts as a release when it comes to cakes. When spraying your pan, make sure that you get all of the surfaces, okay? Now right now I'm spraying this way, not here, and I'm doing that because I'm hitting one side of this of these shapes, and I'm going to come back and hit the other side in a moment. And I'm doing this to make sure I get even and full coverage in my pan, okay? Trust me, this works. It's weird, but it works. Our pan is ready to bake. Next thing, let's get this in and then into a 350-degree oven. Now when you're pouring one of these, if you want, you can pour from one location and just allow it to drop in and turn that pan as it's dropping into it, okay? Just like that. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm smelling this. The smell of the cake batter itself is absolutely fantastic. It's got a rich berry smell to it, plus that wine, the butter mixed in there, all of these odors hitting at once. Yeah, I'm making a little mess on my counter too. You know what? As I mentioned, sometimes when you make a cake, there's a little bit of a mess. Don't sweat the mess. Just enjoy making the cake, okay? Now, this is important. I'm going to put a towel here, and we are going to knock off all of, well, we're going to knock out the bubbles, essentially. There's our towel. This is an important thing to do. And you might be thinking, we did all that work to get air into it. Why are we banging it? Okay, folks, this is not a souffle, all right? We're not in the middle of baking a souffle and we have to be delicate. This is cake batter, and batter holds the air that's worked into it very well, which is the reason I'm banging it as hard as I am. Now, that should help it to settle against the sides. It's ready for the oven, and as I bake it on the rack below this, I'm going to put a pan. Sometimes these things overflow the center hole and you don't need the burning on the bottom of your oven, okay? Use an extra pan. All right. Something to catch drips and something to make delicious. Okay, folks, I have just removed this from my oven. I'm going to give it 12 minutes of rest time. This is really important. The other thing that's important is let's test our cake. Insert that knife, pull it out. Do I have anything wet on there? Nope, that's crumbly. And a good flavor too. So we have a nice cake here, a little bit crumbly, good and moist on the inside. It's not wet, so it's fully cooked. I need to give it 12 minutes. Then we turn it over and turn it out. And the reason we do 12 minutes and then turning it out is because of the sugar in the cake. What happens is right now it's very soft because it's very hot. Sugar turns liquid when it gets hot enough. That's what's happened here. If I let the sugars cool too much, they will recongeal to the pan and the cake will stick badly. So we need to turn it out while it's still hot. I just don't want it to be too hot. So we give it 12 minutes and then we flip it over and turn it out. Now I have something to make that easier. I have this little cardboard round we're going to put on top of it. These are actually used for pizza and for cakes both, and that's what we're going to do here. This, after it is turned out onto the round, we're going to decorate it with some buttercream and other goodies, and it's going to be a really cool cake at that point. Okay, 12 minutes from now we give it a flip. It's been 12 minutes now since I started the cool on this, or since I took it from the oven. This has risen up higher than the sides of the pan, and I want it to be kind of level when I go setting it down on my cake round. Now I don't have to have it level, but I would like it level. Let me just take off this top up here. There we go. That's going to help it set a little more flat. There we are. Got our extra pieces out of the way. Now when we turn one of these out, you need something to set it on. In this case, I'm going to be using this right here, which is a cake and pizza round, and I'm just going to flip it over. Please remember, your pan is still 350 degrees, or the better part of it. So when doing this, make sure you use something that allows you to handle it safely. So I want to hold it with my towel and flip it over. I want to set it right back down on that same cooling rack. Very gently, carefully remove my pan. And there we go. Let's look at that pan. See there? Nice, clean release all the way through, and we have a beautiful light colored cake there. That cake came out wonderful. All we have to do is finish cooling it down and we can start decorating it. Remember, if you're going to put buttercream on a cake, you can't do it when it's hot. It has to be room temperature. There is no cheating when it comes to frosting a cake. I have more butter here. That's a pound of butter, and I have a pound and a half of confectioner's sugar, and that way we're going to make us a nice buttercream frosting. I've also got some colorant here. I'm going to show you how this is done. It's the same way we did creaming the butter earlier, except this time we're going to push it to its limit. We're really going to build a lot of volume. We're going to make it super soft, and then we're going to slowly work in the confectioner's sugar, and we're going to fluff it once again. And it makes a wonderful, wonderful frosting. This is going to be piped on, and it's going to be done in a design, so it'll be kind of fun. All right, let's take a look down in here so we can see what we're doing and get on with this. Pound of butter here and 1.5 pounds of confectioner's sugar. And yes, I am going to sift the sugar the exact same way that I sifted that flour. You remember earlier when we took the time to scrape the bowl, because not everything gets hit. And this is one of those cases. You can see how the yellow is much darker against the bowl, which indicates that some of it isn't quite getting hit. So we're going to go ahead, scrape our bowl, get it back up in there, and now you're going to see sort of a striped looking butter, and it's exactly because of that. And so I think this butter right here illustrates very well exactly what I'm talking about and why it is so necessary. Take a look at this. Look how our butter has increased in volume. This thing is filled up, and that bowl is pretty doggone full too. And we only started with 4 sticks, right? All right, so we're having a lot of effect here. Now, buttercream, possibly the most delicious of all the frostings. Certainly my favorite. And there's a lot of different kinds of buttercream. This is a very basic and simple way to do buttercream, what I'm doing here. And that is just cream the butter, get the sugar worked into it, and move on with life, folks. Don't make it any harder than absolutely necessary. Okay, now back in there and back to it. And if you'll notice, I'm using a higher speed now, and of course I'm using the whisk this time. And this time, of course, it's all about softening the butter, and that's the reason I'm doing it this way. Well, right there we have something beautiful going on, and it's just this absolutely gorgeous butter. And I said what we were going to look for is butter that was going to give us kind of a stiff peak to it. Now I would say if anything qualifies for a stiff peak, that right there pretty much qualifies for a stiff peak. All right, that's exactly what we're looking for. Light, fluffy, and stiff. Okay, next goes the sugar. Now you can't do the sugar at high speed, folks. You got to keep this at a low speed, because that's what that low speed is meant for, is for getting ingredients mixed in. If I put a whole bunch of this in there and then turn it on, it'll just throw it up out of the bowl and it'll be a big cloud of dust. All right, and see how it is shaping differently. Okay, that's the first sign that tells us that we are now starting to get enough sugar in there to do what we want, to be able to make good shapes with our buttercream. And you know, in part of icing, that's what that is you're looking to make good shapes with it. All right, now we have the condition that we're looking for, which is, again, we're looking for that kind of that stiff peak thing. Dash that in, pull it out, and boom. So we have multiple stiff peaks going on right there, and they're beautiful. And that's holding a good shape. It sticks well. It doesn't let go. This is going to be some good buttercream. All I need to do is just turn it to the color I want it to be. Yummy. Love fresh buttercream. The color inside of my cake, as you saw earlier, well, it's when the blackberry gets broken up and is streaked out, it's kind of bluish, sort of a lavender type of bluish color. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with blue food coloring. Now you can use a gel for this, which is the type for baking, and this is also a powdered type that's commonly used now for baking. Professionals are using this a lot. So I'm going to take about 1/4 teaspoon, roughly. We'll put it in there, and then about another 1/8 right there. And that's the blue. So let's turn that on and let's see what we get with it. And there it turns blue. Isn't that beautiful? So we see this beautiful blue color that we have going on here. I mean, look at that. That's stunning. That's like electric blue. And it only took such a tiny amount of that food coloring. So what we're going to do is we're going to deepen this color, make it a little more kind of lavendery, okay, right? So we're going to put a little bit of red in there, not a lot, just that amount right there. The quantity of everything that we've used today, let's start right here with that flour. That was 480 grams of cake flour, folks. That's a low gluten flour. Don't use all-purpose on this one. 480 grams of flour to 113 grams of butter, or 1/4 pound, 1 stick in the United States. To that also, our sugar right here, we need 250 grams of sugar, 150 grams of blackberry jam, 3/4 cup of blackberry wine, and if you can't find that, 3/4 cup of Concord grape wine will do fine. 1/8 teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and 5 egg whites. That is our recipe for Blackberry Wine Cake. Now in addition, you've seen we put a little bit of extra fruit in there to have a little fun. You don't have to. You can go with a smooth cake inside, or you can put the fruit in there as much as you'd like, up to roughly 1/2 cup. There it is, folks, Blackberry Wine Cake. Now let's take a look at the end product on this delicious little goodie. When it's time to do some piping, first of all, you need to pick your tip. I just picked out a nice little rosette type tip here that produces a beautiful little kind of a flower and does a really good job. Whatever tip you want to choose, pick whatever you like. Now if you'll notice, look how far I'm making the cuff come down on my piping bag. You might think, oh, well, that's too far. I want to explain something to you. There's never such a thing as too far when it comes to your cuff on your piping bag. And this is because you don't want a bunch of buttercream smeared all over the place outside of this. So if you tuck this cuff way down when you go to filling this thing, and you'll be surprised how much it holds, then the cuff will be much neater and cleaner. So that's what I've done here. Let's take out buttercream, and I can just brace my bowl with my cuff, my hand, when I'm picking up buttercream. Just use a spatula or whatever you have to work it down in there. Isn't that easy? And see how I'll take it and I'll just wipe it off right on the edge. I'll push it down in. So when I'm filled, simply take the top, that cuff, and pull it straight up like so. There we have it. Simple enough. Push this out of my way. When I'm going to pipe, you need to first prime your bag and your tip, and basically what's called burping it. And that is where we just squeeze out a little bit. Start by pinching the bag at the top and just giving it a little bit of a spin, okay? Then, holding the bag between my thumb and my first finger, I have these other fingers to squeeze the bag with. All right, boom. Squeeze out a little off that nozzle. See how that came out nice and pretty? We're ready to go piping. Ha ha, yay. Piping is a lot of fun. Give it a try, don't be afraid of it. All right, easy enough. So we're just going to take our piping tip, angle it slightly, and run right into there. Isn't that nice? All right. Okay, pretty neat looking at this point, isn't it? Very simple little thing. Now, let's take that piping bag and refill it, because we're going to do some fill up under here and get fun with this little thing. Do the straight pipe in and out. And some blackberries. Shove you some blackberries up in the sides there. Oh yeah, look at this. How much fun is that? Okay, let's go ahead and cut this cake and get a piece of it down on the plate. Oh, I can't wait for this. I'm not sure where I want to cut, if I want to cut here or here. So I'm just going to make the plunge. We're going to go right here. Yes. And then I'm going to come over. Do it again right here. And with that knife, I'm going to pull that one piece out. There we go. Hot dog. That was fun, wasn't it? Oh, looky here. Blackberry wine cake. I've been looking forward to you. Oh yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the right amount of sugar, just a little bit of tart to offset it, a very light, delicate kind of cake. This is good and it's worth your time. Thank you very much for watching this. If you would, please take a look right down underneath this video in the description box. You're going to find some links to my channel, that's Texas Cooking Today, to my other channel, which is Chef Trotters Tips, to my Facebook, to my Twitter, to my website also. My website, which is S.A.Trotter.com, and that is where you're going to find S.A.Trotter Arts LLC that produces this right here. Wonderful, good tasting stuff. Folks, thank you very much for watching. Please take a look at all of that. Please subscribe if you haven't, and please give this recipe a try, because you're going to like it.